All right. I wanted to say a few words, and I'm glad that Medium gave me this opportunity just to talk about independently published and self published writers. When I first started out years and years ago, I determined that if I was going to be a writer who was published with small presses, or if I was self published, I had an obligation to also read the works of other small press writers and self published writers. And I've been doing this for 20 some years now. And it just seems strange to me that so many writers will publish their book, self publish a book, and then refuse to read anything that's also self published. I feel that you have to be out reading and reviewing books if you want to be a writer, if you want to be a novelist. You have to be reviewing books all the time. And I started out doing it with Amazon, and for a while there, I was one of the top reviewers on Amazon. And it's moved on and it's transformed throughout the years. For a while, I ran a web page where I would just send out a standard set of questions to small press and self-published writers. I'd ask them about their tactics, who they were published with, and then I'd post it, and it would be publicity for their book. But at the same time, I had all this information that I was gathering up, and I ended up getting a publishing contract from one of the publishers I met through interviewing an author that way. So it's one of those things where today I'll just pick up a lot of books. I pick up random books. I don't think about whether it's something that's going to appeal to me. I just have made it my habit to pick up self-published and small press books and read them and leave a generous review about them. Um, just because you never know what it's going to be like, and I think it's important to be out there in the field, seeing what kind of things are out there. Um, the thing about it is that there's so many books out there. It's an untapped resource. There's so many writers, and with the new direction that Medium's going with this narrative focus that they're showing through Boost, I just think that the millions of books. I mean, it's hard to give a straight number on how many books are published each year, but it's hundreds of thousands or millions. And the people that publish those, they have talent, they have stories to tell. And I found what's always really interesting in the books that I've read are the books about, you know, the memoirs, the things where people tell their story. Every family's got an interesting story that needs to be told. Every single book I've read like that, it's always been fascinating. It's always taught me something. I've had the experience of reading memoirs from people that grew up where I grew up, but offset by 10 years or 30 years. And it's strange when you're reading something like that because you recognize your own experience, but then at the same time, you see how things are different. And you get this weird kind of recognition that your own life hasn't been as unique as you thought it was. Other people have gone through things that are surprisingly similar. It's like the line from The Catcher in the Rye, where people have wrestled with these same feelings before. So there's a lot out there. And what I keep trying to do is recruit these self published writers to come and be a part of Medium. And part of it is just that huge number of them that are out there. And Medium's doing fine there. They've got tremendous writers already, but heck, for sustainability, we can always do more, right? And there's just some really great stories. And it always pains me to see that so many books are published and then nobody ever looks at them. Nobody ever leaves a review. Nobody reads them. So, I, with this new the Medium verified author feature that's been out for a few months now, it's a very attractive thing, I think, to small press and self-published writers who can come on and get some visibility for their work that way. But what's been funny for me is that I've been having such a hard time recruiting even the people that know me personally to come over, and I'm just telling them, it's like, just establish yourself on Medium, get yourself established as a verified book author on there, and we'll see what happens. And I think the reason it's hard for them to. There's just so many scams out there for independent writers. I think a lot of them are just scared off. They've been trained to be afraid. Where that it's also weird how it's so hard to get any kind of attention and to get any kind of engagement with anything you write. I have an article scheduled for Monday with the Writing Cooperative about how you'd have better luck if you just go randomly up to people and say, "Hey, give me $5," versus saying, "Would you like to buy my book for $5?" At the end of the day, you'll have more money in your pocket if you're just asking for $5 for nothing, which is kind of I don't know if it's because people have just been conditioned to not read or to not be interested, or I don't know why that is, but it just pains me that all these books are out there and they're never seen. But throughout the years, I've tried various ways to. I just like to give back and give a little bit of attention. And 20 years ago, it didn't mean much if I wrote a review of just some random writer that I happened to stumble across. But these days, I have a little bit of a following, and so it's a good thing if somebody writes a review and they just mention your book and they provide a buy link and they say, I'm not necessarily recommending. There's not recommendations. I'm not telling people go out and buy them. I'm saying, here's this thing, this is what it made me feel. This is where you can see it. If it's of interest to you, go and get it. But there's a huge demand for this. There's a huge demand for book reviews for small press books. When I first started doing this, when I lived in Peru, I had a little web page, and I sent a email to one of the self-publishing companies at the time. Just like, "Hey, I'm doing this. Here's my email." They included in a newsletter, and within an hour of that, I had over 100 requests to do book reviews. If you start getting if you're a person who loves to read, and if you start making it be known that you do reviews, you'll never have to buy a book again for the rest of your life. But at the same time, it's like once I see that it's there, it's like, why isn't there any way to capitalize on this? There's all this energy, there's all this brain power, there are all these quality writers out there with stories to tell, and they publish their books, and then nobody ever hears anything about it. So, I mean, the assets there is just the sheer number, the sheer talent, and the sheer quality stories. The hard part is that, I can't review every single book that comes out. And over the years, I've had my stops and starts. I can't write a review of all million or 5 million books that's published every year. And even if I could, that wouldn't be enough. I mean, one review isn't enough. What we want to do is get a discussion going on these books. And so I just really like to do my part to get kind of a culture change going, where I'd like to see more where, if you're browsing through Medium and you see, oh, here's an author I like, and you check their profile and you see they have a book, just get the book and read it when you get a chance. You don't even have to read the whole thing. Let me back up and just say I started with the assets, the huge number of writers out there writing these books, and they are all very eager to have people engage with their work. But the liabilities are, it's just the time it takes to read all these books, and there's so many of them, and then you can't really get compensated directly. You can't charge writers. I mean, it'd be easy if you could just put up your page and say $25 for a book review and you do it, but it just doesn't work. And I think that's part of that is because there's so many scams. Well, you don't really get a legitimate review when somebody's doing that. So the trick is to figure out a mechanism where we can harness that brain power, get people to read these books, get some engagement with these books, but not have it overwhelm the reviewers. And through the years, I've tried a lot of different things. These days, what I try to ask of people is just for them to pick up one book a month, just some random book. And another thing about it, that the reluctance to pick up independent or small press books, it strikes me as odd, because I think people that read, they're on the quest for they don't like to have their ideas be manipulated. They like to do their own research, see things for themselves. But if you go to a bookstore, the books at the bookstore have been chosen by somebody else. And if you go even to the library, the books at the library have been chosen. And it's only by just randomly, picking up something that nobody knows about that you really kind of get out into the field and see what people are thinking. And a lot of times, and let's see, feel free to ask me questions at any time as we go in here. Yes, we don't have. I think it's open. There. I think there's a place for curation. Curation isn't important. It's nice to have, there's a time and a place for that. And there's days when I just want to read, okay, here's something that it's been selected by a group that I know is going to provide something of high quality. And, I'm happy and content to do that. But there are the days where you just like to get out and see the stuff that's what people really think. I mean, the example I was going to provide was if you're doing some renovations in your home and you broke into a wall and you found a manuscript from the Civil War, you'd start reading it, and it wouldn't be because you wouldn't say, "No, I'm not going to read this because it wasn't taken up by a major publisher." How many are there now? Are there still 3, or is it down to 2? And that's the kind of thing that concerns me because they keep getting consolidated, where the distribution mechanisms are overly controlled. So you have to kind of worry a little bit about what stuff is being presented to us. So it's just good to put your toe in the water of something that's completely unfiltered just to see what other people are thinking. And I have to say, I mean, there's a lot of myths that go out about, self-published or small press books, that they aren't as good, or, that they're poorly edited. And it hasn't been the case. I found that it's sort of like how in film, everybody always contends that the best films are the small art house films, and people get a little bit snobbish about the big studio releases that are kind of diluted for a bigger audience. But in publishing, that's not the same. In publishing, people they disregard the smaller press stuff often, and they only go right to the big publishers. So I don't understand why that inversion has taken place. Now, so over the years, yes, I've been writing all these different reviews, and I've found that the best thing to do is just get the review out there. And like most of what I do when I'm going through these books, because there's just so many and it's so overwhelming, is you don't have to feel you have to read the whole book through from beginning to end. One of my friends is an acquaintance with a former vice president of the National Book Critics Circle, and he said in his line of work, he would get every Monday he'd get a big crate of books, and these were the big press books that it was his job to review and put in the mega newspapers and everything. And he said the industry standard at the time was to read the first 3 chapters and the final chapter. So just because it's just the time it takes to get through these books. So what I've been starting to do on my webpage is call them, rather than call them reviews, is just call them an engagement. Because you don't want to let yourself get bogged down. As a reviewer, as a person who gets a reputation for giving something back and trying to get some attention for, lesser known writers, you're going to be overwhelmed. You have to set some boundaries. And like I said, it's like I can't review everybody's book. I do the best I can, but you just have to set some parameters so you can keep going, because it's more important to keep going than to quit. Perhaps at some point there'll be some major platform that is able to meet the demand that's out there for engagement with all these very good and very worthy stories that need to be shared. But right now it's just people who are picking up and randomly reading books. So it's one of those things I've been working on for 20 years, and I don't really have an answer for it. And just at the end of my lifetime, these books are never all going to be reviewed or addressed, but I'll just try to keep doing what I can to highlight, the random writers I come across that I think have some important stories to tell. And what I found is that everybody has more time than they think to, you know, to review the books that they meet. It's just first we have to get through that resistance to. It's like, okay, this is an author I like. Let's see if they've written a book. Okay, I pick up their book. Now it's on my phone. So then what I've found is what I just try to do is during the course of a week in my downtime when I find myself scrolling, I recognize I'm wasting time. So I'll go over and see what my list of books that I've randomly picked up, and I'll find one and I'll just work on it. For example, my daughter has soccer practice, and I like going to soccer practice, but it's the scrimmage I like to see the most. So the first hour is just drill. So I'll sit and it's like, okay, I've got an hour. I'll work with this book for a while, and I find that you don't necessarily have to read the entire book to do a positive engagement. I start thinking things, I start feeling things, just from the first 3, 4, 5 chapters. I usually spend 6, 7 hours on a book before I review it. I have plenty to say. You don't want to get to that point where you're so bogged down with the need to finish the book that you start forgetting the things that the book has provoked you to think. And then when I get to the time to write a review, one concern was always, it's like, are you going to lose readers or subscribers because they're there to listen to your content? And if you're spending too much time reviewing some writer that they've never heard of, that they'll be off put by that. So when I'm writing a review of a lesser known writer, I always feel that the review has to stand on its own, whatever the interesting concept of the book is. You don't have to do that if you're writing, if you're writing a review of a Stephen King book or something. Stephen King's name and the title is going to get engagement for you. But if you're writing a review of an unknown author, the unknown author's name in the title isn't going to help you. People don't know what that is. So instead, you got to do more of a topical approach and insert yourself into it. And over the years, I've found that I've developed this where I do my reviews of other things kind of that way too now. If you read my review of the Barbie movie, it was more a focus on my interaction with that film. And that was a really successful article that I did. So this effort to engage with the things that are not, in the little Overton window of what's unacceptable, what's considered in our time, it's unacceptable, and the work that can be published, it has an interesting effect. It gives you it's like visiting a foreign country. You're seeing things from a different viewpoint that's not, everything on TV is always the same, it seems to me. And everything in the bookstore is always kind of the same. So it's only when you jump into these independent, self-published books that you start seeing things some things are kind of amazing. It's always interesting to hear people tell about their real life. Some of these stories, things people share, it feels like being a fly on a wall in a very polite or personal and intimate conversation sometimes. If people are willing to share that level of their life and put it out and publish it, I'm happy to read it and give them a thoughtful comments on it. And I'm just grateful for the ability to look in on these lives that are so different from the life, that I have. You learn so much from it. And there's always just a certain way that certain topics are presented in what is traditional, the traditional publishing. You find these other ways of approaching it. I mean, you look at books, the book like Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. It's a fascinating book where, Harriet Jacobs wrote it. It's just an amazing story that this even exists. I mean, few people that were slaves were taught how to read, and then she wrote a manuscript, and so now we have this historical relic of the truth of that era You know, if you've been keeping up with politics and you see all the things that are going on with suppressing various things about history, a book like that cuts right through it all and shows the reality. Um, the books that are tended to pick up and presented in the mainstream, you know, we've got a certain type of person that is most likely to have their book distributed. So it's nice to be a person who just kind of looks for those other stories that are on the outskirts. And like I said before, it's like once you kind of get a reputation for being a reviewer because the demand is out there. There's such a big demand. Um, you know, publicists will start tracking you down, and I've gone through that a lot too. And I think that's wonderful. They'll send me their books. I'll work on those. But at the same time, I want to be able to read the books of people that you know don't have a publicist. They just felt that itch to write something. They put it out there. And so what I've done with my webpage, and like I said, it's the first thing I did when I came on Medium is I started my little webpage called Write and Review. What do we got here? Because I knew if nothing else, at the time when I first started with Medium, I don't know, I've got some things here, I don't know what they're. Okay. So I didn't know what necessarily I was going to do with Medium when I was just starting out. I was coming over from content writing. And but I knew I was going to at least dedicate some of my time to doing book reviews for small press writers. So I did a little publication called Write and Review, and anybody who wants to come on as a reviewer, you're completely welcome to do that. I do have my call to action button. If I click on this, does it appear? I don't know. Nope. Come over to the webpage. I'll add you as a writer, and I just want to be behind this culture shift where we take away the veil and just everybody is a little bit more willing to give a chance to books that aren't from the big publishers, that are just from the people you know. I think there's just a reluctance. There's a cultural reluctance people have to pick up a random book from somebody, even somebody whose work they know from Medium. I mean, here's one, Justin Cox. You all know the second I saw him from the Writing Cooperative, the second I saw his book was coming out, just instantly go and buy it. That's the reaction. That's just my reaction these days when I see somebody I know has published a book. The other side of that is if you're one of these people with a manuscript, I've always got a manuscript that I'm looking to place. You should be out reading the catalog of potential publishers that you're evaluating. It's just kind of common sense where if that publisher, if you send them a manuscript, they're probably not going to really look at it. But that publisher is looking for people to review their books, right? So if you want to catch the eye of a publisher, write them as a reviewer, review their work, and then they'll start knowing your name, and things like that just improve your chances. If you want to join the writing cooperative, I'm sure if you were to send, you know, I would write a review of the book and then say, hey, add me as a writer to your publication. It's going to be it's a way to develop just goodwill with writers. Here's one from our human family. I haven't gotten to this yet. Field notes on allyship, achieving equality together. One of the publications I like on Medium too. So it just is one of those ways where the more conversations we get started on these books, and that's what I really want. It's like me by myself doing a review, it's minimal impact. What I really want to see is multiple people picking up these different books and just getting in the habit of leaving reviews. If you jump on Amazon and just do as much as just say, hey, good review, 5 stars, good review. That's all you have to do. Just any kind of engagement with these small press books is just a huge way. It has a huge impact on writers. Yeah, it's interesting too, that whole idea of recalibrating your perspective on things. It is that sense of getting out of just kind of the mainstream, seeing these small press books out there. And it would just be so interesting if we could figure out a way. I get so frustrated with some of my dear author friends are so fixated on, all they want is that big contract from a big three publisher. And I keep telling them, it's like, come on over to Medium, start. And these are people that have books published already. I'm like, put up, get your verified book account, write some articles. People will start engaging with your work that way. It'll start developing, but it's hard to capture these writers to do this. And so just creating more of a landing spot. I really am just captivated by this idea that, and Medium already is a wonderful community. I just really appreciate how tolerant and how positive it is compared to. I was listening to Arturo today on his presentation, and he's like, some of the other social media sites out there are very toxic, and I've just been delighted to find Medium because I didn't even recognize how toxic some of the other pages I spent my time on actually were. And it's funny how, so much content on those other social media sites will get buried. And so just more agency where you see you're in charge of selecting, what you're reading. And I think just this completely random approach, it's semi-random if you're, reading an article by somebody and then picking up their book. It's not, you're not picking it up completely up out of nowhere. You're getting kind of an idea what it's like. But it's still more of your own, agency over your choice about what you're reading. And just putting that stuff into your mind, it changes the way you think. And it's just neat how, I haven't come across, in the 20 years that I've been reviewing independent and small press books, I haven't come across stuff that I haven't come across hurtful messages. I haven't come across self-published books that have hate speech. I think that would be pretty easy to see by reading the back cover copy or the front cover. So I haven't had those kind of problems. Almost everything I found are these heartfelt, human stories, stuff people have a right to share, authentic stories from real people. I years ago did a book about the 10 years I spent living in Peru. It's called Reckless Traveler. And it's funny because after I did that book, some friends sent me, there's the big release called Turn Right at Machu Picchu. I think it's Turn Right, Turn Left. But this is a book where it's somebody's 2-week-long trip to Peru versus, my experience of 10 years living there. You're not going to find, it's the big press stuff tends to get a well-known author. They send them over to do this trip, and then they write the book. And that's, there's a value to that. But it's like my book about cross-country skiing. It's like I grew up in the place where the America's biggest cross-country ski race is part of our culture and part of our community, and it's a whole lifetime involved in that. And that's different than, a book that somebody wrote because they tried it for a year to see how good they were going to get at it. And it's just, you get more, when you're going to the source of some of these things and ideas that are in our culture, you just get more of an authentic view. So I just like the idea of, and for those of you who are interested, like I said, don't hesitate to contact me if you want to get involved doing some book reviews. I'd like to do what I can, whatever small part I can, to make Medium known to all people out there who have a story to tell, which it largely is. But there's a lot of people who have told their stories in book form and are frustrated because they've never had any engagement with their book. And I think, these are good writers. It would be great if Medium could capture them. And if one way they could entice those people to come to Medium is with the promise that there are those within the community of Medium who are going to look on their bio page and find their book and engage with it and just help the world know that these books are out there, just to be something of a sorting mechanism, beyond the big publishers and beyond the things that seem to me sometimes to want to control a narrative rather than explore what narratives are really out there. So if you want to join, it's like I said, it's my write and review page is a small page. You'll make good connections with the writers whose books you review. It's not going to make you any money, but it has a value. And from now until the day I stop writing, I'm going to continue to randomly pick up small press and independently published books every chance that I get. And I just hope that at some point, if my platform continues to grow, I can be a person who can always give back every month, at least one a month. I hope to be able to do. I like to try to do one a week. Get a couple sales, and it means the world to these writers who, if they're sitting there with a book that's on Amazon, it's had no engagement, no sales. If you come along and read it and write a review for them, it's a special feeling, and those people, they'll stick around, and they'll support you. So it's a good part of being a writer, I think. Giving back, writing reviews, and doing what you can to help your other fellow writers out. The more of those that we can bring in, the more we can spread the word that Medium is a place where writers can come and have their books be treated kindly. I think that's better overall for the whole platform. So I guess that's pretty much winding up to the end of what I wanted to say today. I wonder if there was an opportunity to hear. Well, here's all the questions. I didn't find them. So I thank you. I'll look through these questions that you've sent me, and a lot of these are things I'll just address in articles. So I hope you guys follow me. Let's see. Yeah, contact your publishers after review. A lot of places will even send you Audible copies or audiobook codes, so you can do those too. Looks like I think I'm out of time though. Sorry, I didn't see the questions until the very end, but technology seemed to work. Thank you guys for coming in. I hope you all have a wonderful Medium day.